This segment of the news is brought to you by Sun Oil Limited.
Welcome back. The Democratic and National Alliance also welcoming Mr. Turnquest's resignation. Party leader Orinthia Kumalafi says it's imperative that the rule of law is upheld. Now she acknowledges that Mr. Turnquest is not currently named as a defendant and remains innocent until proven guilty by the courts. However, she says the former DPM's decision to step down is the right one as it preserves the integrity and reputation of the office of the DPM and Minister of Finance for the time being.
Mr. Turnquest must now determine whether his personal affairs and efforts to clear his name will impact his ability to properly represent the constituency of East Grand Bahama without distraction. Our nation is facing the greatest economic and health crisis of our generation. We need competent, stable, and qualified individuals to oversee our economy. Economic recovery for the Bahamas will only come from a strategic approach to diversification and fiscal management. While the Prime Minister has appointed himself as Interim Minister of Finance, he must be aware that we, the Bahamian people, have no confidence in this move, and he is not the one for this role.
Mrs. Kumalafi adds that the appointment of a substantive minister for this important portfolio should be treated with the utmost urgency, unlike previous appointments. She says the resignation of Mr. Turnquest in response to the demands of the Bahamian people is a testament to an awakening within our nation and the birth of a new Bahamas.
While previous administrations have been able to get away without accountability and transparency, this new generation of Bahamians demand change and will be silent no more.
Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis accepted Mr. Turnquest's resignation last evening and has not given an exact timeline as to when the substantive appointment would take place. The complete demolition of the General Post Office at East Hill Street and Royal Victoria Garden site is to be completed by March 2021. This coming from Project Manager O'Neill Moss during a press briefing about the demolition. The former post office is scheduled to be replaced with a new Central Bank of the Bahamas headquarters. The process has been ongoing for about 4 years.
In terms of the timeline for the demolition, we approached the project in 2 phases. The first phase would be the post office, and the time we are looking at an anticipated completion date of that towards the end of January 2021. Once we're done with that, we've cleared up the site. We will then mobilize to the Royal Victoria Gardens to commence the demolition of the buildings selected to be demolished on that site. And the timeline for that demolition to be wrapped up and complete with the project would be right around the first week of March 2021.
Ian Fernando, Capital Development Manager for the Central Bank of the Bahamas, who spearheaded the press conference, spoke to the costs of this project.
Demolition works for both Royal Victoria, because remember now we would have required the demolition contractor to demolish buildings on both the post office site and the Royal Victoria Gardens site. We would have gone out in a public tender for bids, and we received bids ranging from around $2 million all the way up to around $12 million. So that was the spread of the bids that we received. We went through a very judicious process that involved lots of experts, and the decision was to go with Wosley's bid, which was on the lower end of that bid.
According to Mr. Fernandez, certain areas on the Royal Victoria Garden site were preserved due to historical reasons.
We had earmarked the Curry House, the former of R.H. Curry House, for restoration. That is the building that currently houses the reference lab. We had also earmarked another structure on Royal Victoria Gardens called the Little House as possibly something that we would earmark for some sort of saving. So the other buildings, and there are quite a number of them, I think they're all pretty much dilapidated except for the building that's now being used for the HIV clinic. In terms of being dilapidated, all other buildings have to make way for the new premises, but those buildings were earmarked to be saved.
The demolition of the post office officially began on November 19th as part of efforts to modernize the downtown area. The building is set to be demolished first before the project managers move on to the demolition of selected buildings on the Royal Victoria Gardens site. You're watching JCN News. Stay with us.
This segment of the news has been brought to you by Sun Oil Limited.